Okay, Monday, September 26th. This is another follow-up video on Caterpillar stock here. The last video, I was showing how we were taking out the lows here on this first push down. And at that point, we were pausing with some potential resistance areas above. So what happened was price came up and we kind of paused here a little bit at this first little gap area, and then I talked about how this was kind of the major area that I was looking at, and price came up there a couple of times and it was kind of balancing out some of the inefficiencies that might have existed as price came flying through that area the first time, and now we're rolling over back to the downside. So again, on the 15-minute chart, which is really kind of the way I judge things, we're starting now to down red again, which is nice, and we can see at this point if this is really it in terms of now getting towards the lows of the day again. Again, my big thing when let me go to this more of this kind of chart here. I have the bigger picture view to the downside. I discussed that. Weekly chart I still think should test lower. Daily chart still inside at the moment. And the big thing for me, as all this was playing out, was this first bar here, the way it was kind of a failure bar or a pause bar. We tried to break out to the upside, couldn't do it, and then failed. So that put me back in line with the bigger picture to start lower a little bit. And then as I watched this first move down relative to this 15-minute price structure, that's just not typically the orderly pullback you want to have one push up and then a directional push up to start the day that I always talk about, and then kind of maybe a secondary push towards the intraday highs. And if anything, I don't even consider this really a strong push up, because directionally we didn't really break much above the first bar high. And if anything, we were just taking out some pre-market stops up there. So even though if you look at the chart, you'd look at that and say, okay, first push up, come back to the midpoint of that first push and maybe starting up again. I didn't see it that way. I was more in line with first bar, couldn't break out to the upside. Then we got the failure. So now we have the overall trend back to the bigger picture downside, on the daily chart with a lot of targets below, as I discussed on the weekly chart here. And therefore, on this first push down, when it took out these two little stops down here, I did say we could get a little bit of pause, and this was the area of inefficiency. So it came back up here, and now that we're coming down strong again, I feel, again, more, it's not like I predicted perfect. As it turns out, it's happening the way I anticipated, but it's just areas to look for and monitor. And if this would have went flying through here and took out the first bar high, then I would have changed my whole scenario. But it came up to a point where I expected, kind of balancing out an inefficiency to start the downtrend again, and that's exactly what's happening. So now I'll go back to the 1-minute chart. You can see here, after all this choppiness to the upside, we're now coming down strong to the downside. Let's see, at this point, even though I can't predict it, I'm going to set up a no-risk trade in my mind, that since I bought the puts up here and everything's working out as anticipated, that let's see if we could take out this low and then build up some momentum down here. And it might not be the day where you get such a strong, push to the lows of yesterday at this point, given the structure, but it's possible. So we'll continue to watch it, but it should set up some nice gains if we can come down to the low end of that range. At least set up a no-risk trade if you want to hold on, in the days, if this was like a Monday that just started up and maybe by Tuesday, Wednesday, we had lower kind of thing, if you're playing it that way. But we'll see what happens. And then, did I pick the perfect stock? Maybe not. I mean, I like Caterpillar for the reasons discussed, but if I look at other stocks like Nvidia, it had a similar kind of a pattern here, but that one all the way worked down to the lows of the day and is now just pausing and heading even lower. So this would have been a better stock to pick. Why I didn't do it, I can't tell you exactly. I'm monitoring a lot of them, but I decided to play Caterpillar. And anyway, it could still work out nicely here, so we'll see what happens. But so far, price action moving the way I expected. I just wanted to point out here, and I'll maybe shoot a video to end the day. I don't want to spend too much time focusing on this, position here, but just it's interesting the way price action forms. Some of the things I look at with the opening move, the first bar, the pre-market highs and lows, and, the bigger picture in play and everything else. And then once you get the breakdown the way, you had a definite area up here that could have rebalanced some trading. We did seem to move up here. We're heading lower. So all good in terms of, no risk. Now the question is it going to end up being a nice, profitable trade to the downside? Hopefully that'll be the case.